Welcome to SciTech Culture with Steve Kern and Ben Warner, where we examine science, technology, and culture in the 21st century. Visit our website at scitechculture.com.
All right, so we're talking about running up and down milk crates, it seems, these days, Steve. I had to laugh at this one, the hashtag milk crate challenge, the crazy things that people get up to. It's funny because, unlike the ice bucket challenge, which I guess was for charity or something, this doesn't seem to have any obvious reason for doing it other than, boosting view counts and showing, the potential for injury, I guess, which is obviously amusing to watch when you're removed from it. But I'm sure it wasn't. I'm sure it was sore in a couple of occasions. But it's interesting, isn't it, that this type of thing it kind of explodes online. You just need a couple of people to do it, hashtag it, and then all of a sudden it's gone all the way around the world.
Well, I guess a challenge like this has got every element you need to make it unique and exciting and viewable. So firstly, you got to get milk crates. Okay, so that means running around in the middle of the night, raiding the back of the supermarket or wherever you get them from, and because you've got to get enough to build your pyramid or ramp or whatever it is you're doing. Then secondly, these things, anyone who knows a milk crate will know they're a little bit squashy. So even once you put them all together, there's going to be a bit of flex. They do shift around. They don't not high friction like plastic or anything like that. So there's an element of danger, and where there's an element of danger and a camera and things go wrong, you've got something watchable. It's no surprise to me that this is rating well.
Oh, absolutely. Ironically, though, I guess if you want to call them, the fun police have come out. The TikToks have fresh off the press this morning. I saw that TikTok had banned it for I don't know what their legalistic whatever comments were around, although it may seem funny, it's resulting in some less funny injuries, I think was the wording that they used. And they obviously didn't want to be seen promoting that sort of stuff. Curious to see if, I'm not sure if some of the other social media platforms have banned it since. But I don't know if you can ever really stop this sort of thing anyway. People will just do it unless you start banning all the users that are doing it, I guess.
Well, I'm just going to put this out there. Is TikTok banning it sort of mean that they're a publishing platform? Anyway, that's just a question I'd like to ask. But surely, users should be able to share and like this stuff and, laugh all the way while someone else is traveling to hospital.
I'm sure it's got something to do with liability.
It's tragic that people will do these things, but unfortunately, people have been doing these things for years, and we've all seen this sort of stuff before on Australia's Funniest Home Videos.
Yes, indeed. And if anyone out there checking the numerous compilation videos that some clever YouTubers have put together that make for some very, very funny viewing, to say the least. All right, let's move on to something maybe a little more serious. Maybe it's a bit amusing only because of the history of it. The story about an exploding Samsung Galaxy A21 on an Alaska Airlines flight. It's the old, phone battery bursting into flame story. Yeah. Obviously, they had the Note 7 issue a couple of years back. This is just one phone, obviously, one example, so that's not really indicative of a trend or anything. I think it's just that they picked up, it's a Samsung Galaxy phone, and that's happened before, so let's post about it. But it does actually, there was another odd thing about it, that the phone was in the cargo hold. Not sure why they stored it there. It's their second phone, maybe. Were they carrying their iPhone on the flight or something, because or whatever? Very curious, but obviously, highlights an element of danger with these devices. Now, obviously, from an engineering standpoint, there's a lot of work that goes into making sure that a battery remains stable in a device. I mean, you don't really see, countless examples of smartphone batteries exploding here, there, and everywhere. So you would think 99.9% of the time they've got it exactly, spot on. But I think it also sort of highlights it doesn't sound like it's fascinating or, headline material, but the science of actually making all of this work, the engineering to make it work so it doesn't explode, given that the batteries can inherently be unstable if not set up properly, is actually the part that I actually find the most interesting out of all of this.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's no way we'll ever know, but it could well be the Android operating system that ignited it while sending data back in transit. But and anyone who's got an Android phone knows that that's quite possible. The other thing that's really interesting, and you're right, these batteries typically are very safe, and the problems that Samsung had with the Note several years ago now, only got engineers to build better batteries. So it is very rare, but from a personal experience, very recently, a friend of mine's house burnt down. A Bluetooth speaker installed under the veranda out the back burst into flame and basically went straight up into the roof cavity and burned his whole house down. So,
wow.
It's rare, but we have a lot of these devices around now, and I think, really at every opportunity we should be powering them down. I know we like to have everything instant on or in standby, but after that story, I'm not so sure.
I'm also wondering if there's a component of this, if you're buying, your $5 devices off of Amazon or something or whatever that may not be perfectly tuned, shall we say, for proper use. You might want to be careful with that sort of stuff too.
Well, we know certainly from the early days, Ben, with cameras and then, buying supplementary battery packs for them. I remember buying a whole lot of cheaper batteries that, for a few months operated as well as the Sony or the Panasonic battery that would come with the camera, but within 6 months would literally go off and not really hold charge and would leak or probably burst into flame if you used them too much. So there's a lot to think about there, and I think people always have to be mindful with the more and more devices we have that are powered by battery or sitting in standby modes, that there's always a risk of these things happening. And these things can happen very quickly and without warning. So, you can imagine the danger this presents on a flight or even if you're in your own home.
Another aspect that I think is quite interesting with this too is it's not that progress isn't standing still or anything. That there's still work trying to develop alternatives to the old lithium-ion battery, potentially using different kinds of electrolytes, etc., to see if that will actually work. Obviously, they still haven't come up with a viable a commercially viable mainstream alternative yet. Otherwise, I'm sure every manufacturer would be adopting it pretty quickly, particularly if it holds, a longer charge or a charge that lasts longer than what lithium-ion batteries do. I'm sure that at some stage there'll be some sort of revolution in that regard. Well, they'll present it as a revolution whenever it eventually ends up happening. But for the time being, it's something that we're still going to be using them, and it may not sound like an interesting sort of thing to research, but it might be worth looking up how these batteries operate and to understand how best to look after them, I guess.
Absolutely, and we've covered this before, but look, just as a very quick summary, lithium batteries are fantastic for any device up to the size of a laptop. Very reliable. There are other options for lithium besides lithium ion, but they're still not commercially available, but I'm sure they'll become available in the next 4 to 5 years as we're seeing the sort of storage capacity and power of these batteries ramp up. Above the size of a laptop, even though we're using lithium, it's not the optimum material. But we'll have to wait and see. I think there's just so much technology and investment already in lithium that it's still preferred for car batteries and for solar or photovoltaic storage. But it's not actually the best battery on those larger sort of, kits. So anyway, something we'll see more of in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, I guess finally to round out the little episode here, we'll return to the ongoing stories related to the pandemic. Obviously, still going strong here in Australia. Unfortunately, New South Wales recorded another 1,000 cases today, the time we're recording this. Yeah. The Melbourne one, the Victorian one, still kind of bubbling along at relatively low case numbers, obviously compared to New South Wales. Well, I mean, we're still well under 100, but it's still kind of chugging along, which is a little concerning. Obviously, the two states and the ACT still in full lockdown. Lots of discussion again, and there was the announcement this week that the Pfizer would be opened up to 12 to 15-year-olds, and this idea, and then obviously there's this wider discussion around vaccinating children and the importance of doing that. Obviously, there's a component of it that's around what the wider issue of spread. So the more people you get vaccinated, that kind of you would hope would be attempting to address that issue a bit more head on. The more you get vaccinated, the better it is. But on the other side of it, I think there's a lot of concern, particularly from parents, etc., around how does the Delta variant in particular affect children, and even while it may be that children might only get mild reactions for most part to the Delta variant, I'm pretty sure that parents still don't want their kids to catch it. Because it's still a virus, it's still something that's dealt with, and I guess because it's still such a new version of the virus, for lack of a better term, we still don't know what the long-term effects are.
Yeah, well, look, unfortunately for all parents, there's only two choices. You either vaccinate your kids to protect them from COVID, or you let them catch COVID. Because one of those two things is going to happen. So, it's unfortunate that that's the only choice. And I think, obviously our health professionals sort of are trying to, I guess, message around the benefits. I mean, but look, we vaccinate children already against a whole range of very horrible diseases. Yeah. And, there's easily the argument that vaccinating them against COVID is probably better as achieving herd immunity for all of our society. But, by the same token, if you don't vaccinate because you don't think it'll be serious for children, but then in that one-off case it is, then, it's a no-win situation. So people can only really make the choice of, and I think this applies to all of us now in the community, you have to assume that at some stage in the future you'll get COVID, and then your choice is, and the evidence shows that you would be better off vaccinated than unvaccinated. And it's as simple as that.
Absolutely. I think just lastly too, I think there's a part of the story that's impacting, the overall political narrative strategy, whatever you want to call it, in that as more people are getting vaccinated, and then you think of, say, childcare centres, schools, etc., and this, potential argument you could see coming where if you've got, say, parents who don't want to vaccinate their kids, and how that's going to come to a head in an environment where they're sharing space with the vaccinated kids, etc. And you can tell that there could potentially be some big arguments happening between families, etc., on the ground, but then also more broadly in the overall sort of discussion that happens as a nation, kind of thing.
Yeah, there shouldn't be though. We already have the no vax, no play in childcare. So if you're not vaccinated against whooping cough and a few others, then you can't really enjoy the benefits of those centres, and that's probably a good thing. That these diseases can be devastating for kids that age. So I don't see why COVID is any different to vaccinating against measles, chicken pox, or anything else, to be honest. beyond that, I really don't have anything to give. You know, I would encourage people to get vaccinated, and it's a very difficult topic because part of me, I guess, wants to say that I think parents should have that choice, but part of me also knows that the benefits of vaccination. So really, I would hope that anyone who had to think about making this choice would just go on the evidence and know that their kids already should have had, and in most cases have been vaccinated quite safely. And this situation be no different.
I guess I'm forecasting like the eventual social media posts of outbursts of anger that I'm sure will be coming.
Yeah, and that's fair enough. And this is my point with a lot of the messaging. You know, as soon as you try to push mandatory jabs, these are the responses you'll get. And it's not about a question about whether someone's right or wrong. I think these responses are very natural in the situation. So given that I might not agree with somebody's choices, I don't think that's a reason necessarily to exclude them. I thought we're becoming a more inclusive society generally.
I guess it's the age-old thing, which I get would be the discussion for a whole other time. It's the idea of you're right as an individual to make the decisions you want to make, but what happens when that decision impacts other people who have different decisions. And in this particular case, you've got a public health concern when you're intermixing in a public environment. So it may be that, you can't force someone to have a vaccine, for instance, because that's their choice. But if they then voluntarily go into a public space and potentially infect other people because of that decision, that's where I find that whole thing, that's where it becomes like a kind of an interesting sort of argument to have.
And it's very interesting because if you look at the mortality rates or the damage that COVID causes, which we don't really know yet, if it was at a lighter end of the scale, I don't know. We don't mandate kids get vaccinated against the flu. And I'm not comparing COVID to the flu, by the way. I'm just saying that we don't mandate that. Yeah. And yet there could be an argument that you should.
Yeah.
So I think it's just a very, very tricky area. And with all the pressures that COVID's bringing upon people emotionally, financially, economically, et cetera, I think we just need to tread very carefully. You know, even if we,
I guess
we're right.
I guess
morally.
Yeah, I guess from what I was trying to get at was more that it's the mandate thing is one component, but I guess the focus is more on you as an individual, what you decide to do, but then also how you have to have an understanding of how it may potentially impact others as well, and vice versa. So. The reverse argument would be that you've got a whole bunch of vaccinated people piling on people that are unvaccinated, for instance. That's, I think, where it'll be interesting to see how that whole dialogue goes with this particular matter, the COVID issue. Because, as you said, there's a whole bunch of other things where it doesn't come up as an issue because it's just accepted as part of whatever the narrative has been.
That's right, and I think the fact that we've locked down and people want to be out of lockdown, and people say, well, you can't be out of lockdown unless we do this and that, and I think that's where these sorts of situations grow into something quite ugly, where we need to be really careful that we all stick together, that we're all as sort of mindful of each other's points of view as possible, and we've got to encourage each other to do the right thing without, condemning those that might not.
Absolutely. All right, Steve, we might wrap it up there. Maybe I'll just go and find some milk crates and do this challenge then, and see if I can get a nice big view count on the channel here.
Geez, wear a helmet, Ben, please.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so don't forget our website, scitechculture.com. You can get all of our links and content there. You can subscribe to our YouTube and Vimeo channels, our RSS feeds, and watch us on any and all of your devices. And we greatly appreciate your visits to our website. All right, so that's it for this episode. We'll catch you next time.